Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries YouTube channel. Today we've got the weekly Q&A with Ben about all your injury worries in terms of FPL, but also some general FPL discussions as well. We've had quite a few questions sent in for you, Ben, 33 comments on the Reddit thread. And just to remind people, make sure to stay subscribed to the channel, like and share as well with the community, because we're going to be doing these every week until the end of this season, but also through next season as well. This is cemented in to our weekly schedules to help you. And there's a lot of good content on the Premier Injuries channel as well. So stay subscribed to that. Dr. Raj, me and Ben with our analyses and some very good, unique programs as well. But yes, this is a Q&A session. As always, though, the first question that I do put is, Ben, how are you doing? Are you good at the moment?
I'm very good, Jace. Looking forward to the weekend. Looking forward to closing in and narrowing that gap between my good self and you. I think it's 28 points. So I've got you in the on the crosshairs, and I'm fairly confident going into this game week. I'm going to have to be a little bit more coy, maybe with my team selection and the information that I divulge to you prior to deadline now, because this is game face, this is competition mode. So, you know, there's prizes to be had, bragging rights to be won. So I don't want to be giving away the crown jewels.
Is it poker face time? You know, you Lady Gaga.
I'm going to be more pep. There's going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors going forward.
Okay, very good from you. Tactics, all with it. But let's get into these questions here, because a lot of people are talking about tactics or players or injuries. And the Jack has sent in a question saying, who do you think are essential to have in your team on a wild card, and what differentials would you put in? I mean, this applies to you in both instances, Ben. You just played your wild card and you are the differential dinnery.
Yeah, we've discussed it many times before. I think this season running, you know, the business end, you need to maintain a focus on those players and teams that still have something to play for. That's first and foremost primarily who you'd be looking at. I've heard a lot of people talking about within the community the fixture swing, and people gravitating towards the likes of maybe Arsenal, who look to on paper have, you know, some nice looking fixtures there. How many times have we said it before? And this could come back to bite us on the arse. But stay well clear for me. You know, the Premier League's gone. The only focus now is Europa. So Mikel Arteta will prioritise that competition. So, you know, I would be staying away, because I think the official FPL channel is been touting Rob Holding as a differential centre back this weekend. Certainly not for me, not by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't be going anywhere near that Arsenal back four, truth be known. I think West Ham are a team that does attract me attention. One that we dropped in on the defensive assets. I really do like the pick of Arthur Masuaku. You know, he come back. He's already returned an assist. He is, you know, it will take him a game or two to get back up to speed, get that little bit of sharpness. But if he plays in that advanced role on the left-hand side of a three, maybe in behind, unlikely to be Antonio if he's injured, but it could be maybe a Bowen or a Lingard, you know, then there's potential there for him to return. I really like that. I'm still drawn towards the, you know, I still think James Ward-Prowse. I think Southampton are in a little bit of a false position. You know, they had their injury problems. They had dropped a little bit, but, you know, last weekend's result, coming back from 2-0 down, will be a good shot in the arm, a good confidence boost for them. You know, it depends. How do you classify a differential? Because, you know, I think I picked up Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he was down to around about 13%. So to me, you know, that's just on that borderline of a differential. Ideally, I do like to go sub 10%. But, you know, for somebody like Trent being, you know, it's so low ownership, and the majority of the owners would probably be ghost ships with Trent from the beginning of the season, because there's not many who've, willing to maybe splash that sort of cash on him, given him maybe that indifferent start or that mid period of the season. It's only, recently that he's come back into the limelight, and Liverpool are looking really good for me. And Diogo Jota is somebody who I think, will benefit massively during this run-in. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we could see Jurgen Klopp deploy 4 attacking players this weekend, as he did back in November. I think it was against Manchester City. So that would be good to see, and yeah, see how that one plays out.
I think as well, on the point of differentials, I put a few down here. Not sure if you'll agree with them or disagree, but we'll just talk through them quickly. You have talked about Masuaku there in glowing terms. Kufau is also very low owned, less than 10%. So I did actually go with that 10% differential mark just for you, Ben. Matthew Loughton, I think, is a great shout. We've kind of discussed that obviously teams with nothing to play for seem to concede more and score more towards the end of the season. But I think Burnley will kick on in a sense and keep clean sheets. And also they do play 3 of the 4 relegated or near relegation teams. So that will kind of play in their favour as well. And so obviously there aren't going to be 4 teams relegated, but in terms of our articles, we do mention that we have these groupings of teams and the effects of, where their positions are, what they have to play for actually affects them. Do check those out on the website and also the videos as well. In the midfield, the only one that I could really think of is James Maddison. I think he could be an interesting differential because Leicester have a good run of fixtures. Vardy is not on great form at the moment, but he doesn't stay out of form for very long. He does have 4 assists to his name at the moment, so maybe he's just, about to open that door and the flood come through. And Iheanacho is on good form as well. Now, there is a midfielder here, but it depends if Antonio is injured. Maybe Jared Bowen. We could see kind of a good surge of form from him because he might be asked to do a bit more attacking. Danny Ings is a great one that I think could have a great run. You've mentioned James Ward-Prowse there. Then the one that I think you might have difficulties with, but again, buying into our data here of teams when they have nothing to play for do score more, and we did see them score 2 at the weekend. It's Burnley's Chris Wood. So kind of talking through those interesting differentials there. Any that you like, any that are jumping out to you, and any that you think, Jason, you're an absolute madman.
Look, kind of disagree with any of those, in fairness. Maybe Chris Wood is a player that I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards. Inherently, I don't, the perception maybe is Burnley just don't score a lot, and they're carrying 1 or 2 injury problems. I don't want to get caught too much in the fixtures, during this run-in. I think, people have got different agendas now. There's different factors come into play. And, you would have looked at the Chelsea result as a prime example of that. There's a big green there. They're playing West Bromwich Albion at home. Sending off a side, West Ham were still fully deserving of that 3 points. And so I think, this is the time of season where anything can, really, anything can happen. And so the fact that maybe West Brom are playing Burnley, I don't see that as a gimme. But, Chris Wood's been in great form, him and Matai Vidra. Vidra looks to have stolen a march on J. Rodriguez in terms of that supporting role. Doesn't look like we're going to have Ashley Barnes back, certainly not for this weekend. And even when he does, come back into contention, it's going to be a few weeks before he's back up to speed. So, realistically, it might only be a game or 2 for him. So yeah, look, if Burnley are going to score, inherently it's going to come from Chris Wood.
Let's move it on to Shaquille Oatmeal's question, and they actually have 2 here. It's quite a good username, isn't it? Which City attacker for the next 2 games, and what to do with Antonio Bamford? I'm going to quickly come in on the City attacker discussion because I think we've covered this in our attacker video. But basically, we kind of said if you're going to go for a City attacker, which is a very high risk situation, Kevin De Bruyne is probably the only one that you want to be going for. Trying to second guess Pep is trying to guess the lottery numbers. It's as hard as that. So I don't know if you want to add to that, or if you want to ask Shaquille's second question of what to do with Antonio and Bamford.
Yeah, look, De Bruyne, anyone else is just too much of a risk. So I wouldn't be willing to pay a premium price for a player who isn't nailed down for at least a start, never mind 90 minutes. With regards to Mikel Antonio, somebody I own, great player. Does the damage for West Ham, but just can't be trusted in terms of his body, just seems to let him down. Even if, and he's had a couple of scans this week on that hamstring, even if they've come back as being, a minor little tweaks, or even just a precautionary withdrawal on Monday evening, given his history and given what's happened in the past, he'll be treated with kid gloves. David Moyes will not want to risk him. It helps the fact that Jared Bowen came off the bench, scored within 2 minutes, and led that West Ham line really, really well. So that eases the pressure. That takes that almost that decision out of David Moyes' hands, where he thinks, shall we risk him or not? I think Jared Bowen deserves his place in that starting 11 this weekend, and it's a situation to monitor. But like I say, there's no question his ability and his output. It's just literally keeping him fit. And with regards to Patrick Bamford, he seems to be running on empty the last couple of weeks. It's been a long, hard season for everyone, but in particular Leeds, given their style of play. A lot of work rate, a lot of work going off the ball. Patrick Bamford. What I would say with regards to Leeds, one, he's going to start week in and week out, barring injury. And secondly, if the first sort of 30 game weeks or anything to go by, we know Leeds United will create chances. And, we know he misses his fair share. His conversion rate hasn't been great, but, he's in and around that box. So the law of averages says, that Patrick Bamford, will return and we'll get some, there is some good game weeks ahead for him, I feel.
And the interesting thing as well is, again, something that we did cover a little bit in the attacking discussions, was we think that probably Leeds will be fine to own, because even if they do have a difficult run of fixtures, they do seem to score goals. Maybe not having defenders might be the right thing. But if you're worried about Bamford, and like Ben said, rightly, that there has been a bit of a downturn. He's not as much in the box as he used to be. He's not getting that high XGI or XG involvement. Maybe switch your attentions to Rafinha. He's a bit cheaper. He is a midfielder, but his XGI, shots in the box, phenomenal kind of data from him. So that might be a good alternative as well if you're really sweating on owning Bamford. But moving it to Glittering Ad. Yes, it is Glittering Ad 3-2-2-4. I don't know if that's their favourite formation, but they've asked Vardy or Lacazette for the next 5. I mean, I've got a big kind of inclination. They have actually added that they do have Maddison and Iheanacho already in their squad. Yeah, I've got a big kind of inclination to which one I would go to. Ben, what is your choice?
Well, hands down, it would be Vardy. The concern would be I wouldn't be comfortable tripling up on Leicester City, regardless of what maybe the form or the fixtures tell us. Of course, they're holding on to hopefully a Champions League qualification place. Maddison may be managed again over the coming weeks, but when Maddison comes back in, does Kelechi then drop out, or is it Perez? I think there's questions to be asked. But if you were talking about a straight up contest, with not with any other considerations taken away, is it Lacazette or is it Vardy? I'm saying Vardy.
And this is kind of backed up by the data as well. So in terms of expected points over from game week 31 to 34, Vardy is way ahead of Lacazette in terms of that. And even towards, the whole of the end of the season, Vardy is well ahead of any kind of Arsenal assets. Team shots, kind of looking at it, Arsenal have been a little bit better in kind of creating XG over the last 6 game weeks, and they've kind of matched that. But then you look at Leicester, and they've been way ahead in terms of goal conversions. There is the question of will they be able to keep up that overperformance, but with the players that they do have, that's probably yes. We know that historically Vardy has been able to kind of consistently overperform. There's no questions asked there. Iheanacho is doing well. He's in the form of his life. So, my backing is with Leicester, and that's kind of reflected in the Premier League table as well. They're way ahead of Arsenal. Arsenal have much other kind of priorities, as you said yourself, Ben. So really, Leicester's only priority is that Champions League. They're going to be starting week in, week out, fighting for that, whereas Arsenal might not be. Fit Improvement has asked any update on Rice or Antonio. You've kind of explained about Antonio, so what is the situation with Declan Rice?
Official line is we're looking at maybe 4 to 6 weeks. Personally speaking, I think the club's been a little bit optimistic with regards to that timeline. What we know, it's knee ligament, potentially, and I didn't see the game against Poland, but that's when it happened. Rice did complete 90 minutes. I don't know if it happened in a tackle, which would suggest it's maybe MCL. Given that timeline, it's grade 2. No surgery required is the good thing. What we don't know about Declan Rice is his powers of recovery. He just hasn't really had any kind of major injury up until this point, so we don't know how he'll respond to treatment. We don't know how he'll progress through those activities and rehab program and protocol, which, I suppose is something to hang your hat on. We will wait and see. It's difficult to envisage sort of Declan Rice playing any major minutes or any high-profile games ahead of his potential selection maybe in the England squad. So that's a real conundrum here for Gareth Southgate. He'd be lucky to go, in my opinion, or should I say it would be a gamble for Gareth Southgate to maybe select him, given the fact that he may want to be looking at Jordan Henderson again, who hasn't or won't have had many minutes going into that tournament as well, with other players sort of coming to the fore, maybe Phillips being one of those.
And just to, highlight the brilliant Dr. Raj, who is our fantasy doctor, he's made a video on this, so do check him out at 3CB Performance to kind of give you a little bit more of a deeper dive into the explanation of what has happened to Declan. Yorkie Pork has asked, "Hi Ben, I checked out your site quite often, but there's a feature I often find myself wanting. I'd like to be able to see some sort of injury history. For instance, just now I was wondering why Ricardo Pereira was subbed at half-time for Sheffield United." I mean, Ben, can you answer the Ricardo Pereira thing and maybe give us a little discussion about the site as well?
Yeah, so Ricardo Pereira, that was a hamstring issue. He complained of tightness at half-time. Brendan Rodgers took him out of the game mainly as a precaution. So that's why that happened. And with regards to site development, we will be looking to address a few things come the summer. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. There will be lots of updates through social media. Injury history is something that we used to do with regards to individuals and teams. I'm not 100% sure whether we were going back down that route or not, or whether it's merely the numbers and you'll just have to wait and see. The reason I can't give you a definitive answer is because we're still in the process of just deciding exactly what's happening. But there will be an overhaul of the Premier Injuries website. Hopefully, everybody think it's for the better, but there will be a lot more data insights to be gleaned, from that as well. So watch this space.
Yeah, I'd say to Yorkie Pork, get excited because there's going to be a big release in the summer. Maybe we should do one of those, really cringeworthy transfer release videos, like a lot of clubs do now. I don't know, I could play the piano, you could play the saxophone as we release it. But let's move it on to FUT Newbie. And they've asked which Chelsea defender to get for the next game week given Champions League line-up? Should we get Arsenal and Wolves players given their next fixtures, and who to bring in from Leicester? So there's quite a few ones in there. I think we've covered some of those. But yeah, starting with Chelsea, Ben.
We discussed this on defensive assets in terms of, again, we're looking at players who are maybe locked in to that team. There's a lot of people within the community, leaning towards Alonso. But then you see the performance from Chilwell, and after what happened against West Brom, does Tuchel, because playing 2 games in the space of, 3 days isn't massive. So he doesn't have to rotate his squad too much. Aspilicueta seems to be the one out of that back 3 or possibly back 4 that has the best opportunity, to start week in, week out. We do know that Thiago Silva will be suspended. So if we're looking specifically at this game week, as a Christensen owner, I would like to hope or think that Christensen is in that back line again, particularly after that clean sheet midweek. You could maybe look at Rudiger, because Rudiger was benched against West Brom. So if he's looking at rotating that way around, then you would think maybe Rudiger is nailed for a starting berth.
And just on that, for me, I think Mendy's the only safe option. Coming towards the end of this season time, we talked about there's a 20% increase in rotation towards this end of season period. You want to be knowing that your players are starting, because if they don't start, you get 0 points. So at least if you go with maybe a lesser option at a lesser club, you get the 1 starting point that you wouldn't. In terms of maybe quick firing on those, avoid Arsenal. We've said that already. I am only keen on Pedro Neto, whereas you are very much not keen on any Wolves assets. And I like Jamie Vardy if I was going to go for any of the Leicester assets. Would you go for any different ones, though, there, Ben, in terms of Leicester?
Not really. I do like Madison, but again, just question marks with regards to his fitness and whether it will be managed. We'll see what type of performance Leicester have this weekend. Let's take Manchester City game out of the equation. That's the anomaly. They can do that to anyone. If Leicester produce a good performance this weekend without Madison in that starting 11, then that gives Brendan Rodgers the confidence to proceed and to manage Madison maybe a little bit more carefully. If Leicester bomb again, we could see Madison thrown back in a little bit sooner than hoped. But other than that, not really that keen on many of those Leicester assets.
Corvus Universe has asked, would you rather keep Watkins as an 8th attacker, considering he has the double fixture incoming, or would you trade him for Iheanacho, who has better fixtures but no double and is less nailed? They've given the fact that their other 7 attackers are Fernandes, Gundo, trading for Son this or next game week, Jota, Lingard, Mount, Kane and DCL. That's a fairly good attacking lineup there. Watkins versus Iheanacho, though, Ben, what are your thoughts and feelings on that one?
It's a good question. It's a tough question. I think Kelechi deserves his place in that starting 11, given some of his recent performances. But we've seen against Manchester City's former club, Brendan Rodgers wasn't afraid to bring him off, and with Madison getting back up to full fitness, and, if Kelechi was to have another poorish game, I'm not convinced that he is in that starting 11 week in and week out, when Leicester are back up to full strength. We know Ollie Watkins is. On the flip side to that, Aston Villa haven't been great, but they may take confidence from that come from behind win against Fulham. And obviously Ollie Watkins was back on the score sheet. So, it could be that he's had his little bit of a quiet period and he may look to finish the season fairly strong. But, just from a purely numbers perspective in minutes, it would be Watkins.
This is the interesting debate for me, because looking at form versus fixtures or players there, the form of Leicester and Iheanacho himself would kind of push me towards him. But then you've rightly said that Iheanacho is not a definite starter, and I think that is a big consideration coming towards the end of the season. And what I would say is the interesting thing for me is Leicester's attack and Aston Villa's attack, who I'm very much not keen on at the moment. They've actually got similar kind of underlying numbers. They've got a similar expected goals over the last 6, similar shots in the box, similar chances created, and the same number of big chances created. The big difference is that Leicester are overperforming or scoring those goals, whereas Aston Villa aren't, and they're underperforming. For me, I would just avoid kind of both if the choice was given to me. I like Watkins. I think he's a fantastic player, but without Grealish, because we don't know if he'll be back, Aston Villa just don't have that kind of bit about them. They've not been the same side since the coronavirus outbreak there. And then the third thing is Leicester have something to play for, whereas arguably Aston Villa don't. And so that is going to be a big driver for them. So let's move on to C. Wattham. And he said, which City attacker do you think will start versus Leeds? We said Kevin De Bruyne, so I think we can kind of skip that one, C. Wattham. I hope that is a good enough answer for you there. Sub Scrobler has asked about Aubameyang. What to do with Aubameyang for this week? He faces Sheffield United, but Arsenal fans are saying he's so bad he should be dropped. I mean, first of all, I got to say, he's so bad with that dirty trim. I mean, what has he done to his haircut? It is absolutely awful. Did you see it, Ben?
I did see it. I did. It's like Samson, and he's lost his locks, he's lost his power, his strength, and he just isn't delivering at this moment in time. Continue to disappoint him and Arsenal. Let's not get suckered into fixtures. Wasn't it Sheffield United that went to the Emirates earlier in the season before Christmas? Everybody expected a goal fest, a glut, and I think David McGoldrick scored. I think Arsenal might have nicked the game. Was it 2-1, or it was a lot tighter than it should have been? There was no clean sheet, and for the reasons that we've already outlined, for me, he just doesn't justify the outlay. And I wouldn't be looking at that Sheffield United game and thinking it's a walkover for Arsenal, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, this is the problem, is that Arsenal, their own team underlying data has not been great. They've got 9 goals in their last 6 and all right expected goals, but they're just, that Liverpool game I think is symptomatic of what Arsenal have been this season, kind of devoid of chances. And the other thing is, and we've said this quite a few times, I hope people don't think we're repeating it, but Europa League is priority now. Arsenal, that Aubameyang might be rested for that game or taken off early because that is the priority. They play Slavia Prague tonight. They will play them next week, and Arsenal are going to be doing game management around that rather than game management around the Premier League. That is not the priority at the moment. So I think, again, people are too focused on the fixtures there. There's no form with Arsenal, nothing to make me believe in them. So my fantasy Reddit tact has asked, thanks for getting involved with the community. What's the outlook for Barnes, and when would you guess he'd be back to full-time training, barring no setbacks?
Ashley Barnes. Are you Ashley Barnes or Harvey Barnes? I presume. Yeah, that's the question. I mean, well, I tell you what, we did touch upon Ashley Barnes, so let's presume we're talking about Harvey now. As we know, there was I think it was referred to as maybe a bony fragment came off, and he had a surgical intervention to tidy that up. I think the reality of the situation was it was maybe a little bit of cartilage. We're looking at towards the end of April. That's always been, a realistic timeline. Difficult, to pin down a definitive, time frame on these types of injuries. Again, other factors come into play. If Leicester, drop like a stone and have absolutely nothing to play for, and they're just treading water, then Brendan Rodgers may make the decision, well, what's the point in rushing Harvey Barnes back? Let's make sure that he's recovered properly, and we get him back in pre-season, and he gets a good pre-season under his belt. If maybe there's a pressure for Leicester or, to push on for a Champions League qualification place, and, the squad needs somebody like Harvey Barnes, then potentially Brendan Rodgers could roll a dice. I think realistically, we're maybe looking at, a couple of games, 2 to 3 games max, for Harvey Barnes.
So let's have a look at the next question, and I've just been doing a little number crunching there to hopefully help with it. But One Wallow 221 has asked, who would be a cheap differential with some good fixtures for the run-in? So kind of looking again at that 10% mark, there's not a lot of choice. I mean, one that you've already mentioned, James Ward-Prowse. He's at, I think, in 9.8% of teams, so he's below that 10% mark, and he has a great ability with him. It depends how cheap you're talking about. James Rodriguez, he might be an interesting one because Everton have got some good fixtures towards that end of the season. They do play the bad defence of Sheffield United, Wolves, and they've got an extra game to be played against Aston Villa as well. So there could be a double game week for them, which could be quite interesting. And just going through it, Maddison, I think, is one of the standout options. Apart from that, maybe more limited. I mean, you're always quite big on Tielemans as well. Would you throw him into that mix as well?
I like Tielemans in the absence of Maddison. I think it allows him to be a little bit more expressive, play a little bit more on the front foot. And of course, he's on penalties if Jamie Vardy isn't on the pitch. We've seen a recent upturn in form of him. That Manchester City results just took a little bit of a shine off Leicester for me. You touched on a player earlier, not for me, but putting it out there to the community in terms of his ownership quite low. Pedro Neto, if you're not fooled by, this running thing and you're purely looking at those fixture difficulties, then maybe Pedro Neto is somebody, I think 5.7 million and 7.7% ownership, give or take. So he would tick a few boxes. And, in terms of an attacking threat, Wolves did look, a lot better against West Ham than they have done for a large part of this season. Traore got himself an assist. Fabio Silva got himself a goal. That might be some kind of indication that Nuno's, released the brakes, a little bit of confidence to be taken from that. And if Wolves, do come, I think Neto had 5 shots on target and 4 shots and 4 chances created in that last game. So there was a lot of attacking output. So he might be one that would attract, some interest from there, in and around that price point.
We're coming towards the end of the time that we have here, so I'm going to press you here, Ben, for maybe some quicker answers just to get through as many as possible here. And I do have to say the next username I absolutely love, LSD Eindhoven. They've asked, is it time to triple up on Liverpool with the wild card? If so, would you go for A, TAA Phillips plus Jota, or B, Phillips plus Jota and Salah? I mean, for me, it's got to be Trent and Salah are the 2 big ones. What do you say, Ben?
Yes, agree. B, Salah and Trent.
There you go. If you were wildcarding this week, would you take some fodder forward to help maximise strength for your starting lineups going forward? I think we've said no to that, haven't we? The kind of, we want players that are starting.
Yeah, rotation does increase during this period. Therefore, the chances of players, being rotated in and out is greater. So I would want to make sure that you've at least got some strength and depth on that bench, certainly at maybe 12 and 13.
Now, I think, Ben, you might have to remove emotional response from this one because they've asked, Martinez, keep or sell? If so, who should I buy?
I've sold, and I brought in Forster as a decent differential. Look, he's been a great servant to Villa this season, had a tremendous year, and undoubtedly kept Villa where they are in the league. It's a coin toss. If you want something a little bit more differential, which of course I love, then I would get rid.
Moving on to the next one, best attacker for a 2-week punt apart from Kane. They've said that their options include DCL, Iheanacho, Lacazette, Ings. I think we have a big winner here, Ben.
Do we? I do like Danny Ings. Are we going Danny Ings?
That's what I thought you'd go for.
Yeah, Danny Ings, because he's on my radar for this week, certainly. And I'm expecting again Southampton to finish the season strongly.
See, I did know that you picked Danny Ings there, as we've said, on-air partnership, and so
Yeah.
I know what my husband's going to select. Now, I think this actually might be no. We'll have to end pretty soon. So, to fit in Neto, would you lose Salah, Jota, Bruno, Son, or Lingard?
Oh, that's a tough question. If it hadn't been for the double game week, I would have said Son. Um, depends on whether Jota starts this weekend. Is another one because we know that he's not guaranteed minutes or hasn't been. Although, in as much as I love him, oh, pass.
It's like choosing your favourite son, isn't it?
I mean that yeah. I'll pass.
Okay, we'll move it on to Shessenden.
Too many.
They've said,
Too many things.
is a Lacquer plus Jesus punt for a week or two completely bonkers? I would say yes.
Yes, it is bonkers. Yeah.
And
don't even do it.
We've actually made it to the final question, Ben.
Right.
So, took a failed punt on Havertz last week. Worth keeping him on for Palace or just get rid?
Too much rotation risk for me in that Chelsea. You throw Kante back in the equation this weekend, and that, so who you got up there? You've got Mason Mount, you've got Werner, you've got Giroud, you've got Abraham, you've got Hudson-Odoi. I probably even missed one out, or Ziyech. It is a big punt. One of those ones that may pay off, but I was quite surprised the Palaces soaked up, limited Everton to a goal. Arguably, it should have been a lot more. It's a London derby. It could be another tight game. So, nah, get off Havertz.
So that is the end of the Q&A discussion. Make sure to stay subscribed to the channel. Make sure to follow Ben, and you can follow my Twitter as well. I'll put it up when we've got a Q&A session coming up, because we want to help the community here and have as many FPL questions answered as possible. We steamrolled through the last few there to try and get as many people helped out as possible. But yes, there's a lot of great content over at the Premier Injuries YouTube channel. There's also a lot of great content over at the Premier Injuries website as well. We go into the data a little bit more with some big articles. But for now, we wish you the best of luck. I wish you the best of luck, Ben, even though you're breathing down my neck. And I'm going to pass it to you, Ben, to say any final words as we end the show.
Yeah, another great AMA. Thanks for that, Jason. The hostess with the mostess. Really enjoyed it. And thanks for all the questions from the Reddit community. Like I say, we will be here every week doing a similar types of feedback. So please get your questions in. We do really enjoy it. And and check out some of our other videos. So good luck ahead of game week 31. Green arrows for us all. Maybe you want a bigger green arrow for some rather than others. I'm gunning for you, Mr. McKenna.
I saw that.
But until next week, thanks guys. Good luck and stay safe.